That's gonna be... Okay. Welcome to Coach Duncan Burford, who's defensive coordinator at the Blitz. Duncan, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Simon. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, really good. So we're going to do some D-line stuff. Firstly, would you mind sort of doing defensive line, what we call techniques, so the alignments?
Yeah, sure. I know there's a few different ways of doing it. So, yeah, what we do is starting from head up on the center is 0, and then outside shades or all outside shades along the lines are at odd numbers. So ones are outside shade on the center, threes are outside shades on the guards, fives are outside shades on tackles. All of our even numbers are heads up. So 0, 2, and 4 are heads up on center guard tackle. And then we put an I on the head up number for inside. So 2I and 4I are our inside shades on guard and tackle, respectively.
Perfect. Thanks. Just for new viewers and new coaches, I think sometimes that it definitely gets forgotten in books and things like that. So,
Yeah.
and then what sort of alignments do you use, and what techniques do you use?
Yeah. So we're a 3-4 team, but we use a lot of shaded techniques. We don't really use much head up. So we tend to run with a 1 and a 3 on the interior, and then our 5 techs are pretty broadly 5 technique, but sometimes they widen out in pass situations. And the way that we try to define that alignment is within shoulder to shoulder of the offensive lineman. So a 3 technique, if it's on the left-hand side, right shoulder to the guard's outside shoulder is roughly the kind of alignment we're looking for. We do give the guys a little bit of freedom to play around with that. As long as they're able to execute their assignments, we give them a little bit of freedom. So some of the guys, particularly in pass rush situations, they like to try and set up their pass rush moves a little bit. So we give them that little bit of freedom to play around with it if it's being successful. If they don't know why they're moving around, then there's no point. But if they're trying to draw the tackle, for instance, to put a wider step with their first step because they want to shoot back inside, then okay, we can let them do that if that's something that they think is going to work. But we practice a lot of those moves, so they get a feel of what's going to work and what's not. But yeah, otherwise we say kind of shoulder to shoulder for those shade techniques.
Perfect. And then, do you have a sort of basic read system?
Yeah, so the progression that we put guys through, it's so we start with we want to punch the offensive lineman with our first step. So as we come out of our stance, short steps and punch as a kind of just our automatic movement. So we rep that quite a lot, that first step, that punch, just as we're getting ourselves set. I really try and emphasize short first steps. I think one of the very common mistakes that we see at most levels is defensive linemen trying to take really long first steps. And all that does is it pops people's chests up to create a big target for a blocker to hit, and it slows all your momentum down. It's like a running technique thing. Like if you put your foot too far in front of you, it just serves as an anchor to your forward momentum. If you look at, say, Usain Bolt running, when his foot hits the ground, it's actually pretty much underneath his hips. It looks like he's taking these big, long strides, but he puts his foot down pretty much underneath his hips to keep that forward momentum going. So we really try and get short first steps and punch. And then we want to try and reset the line of scrimmage at the heels of the offensive line. And that's really just a way of structuring how much time we want them to spend like battling with the offensive lineman. Some people are just trying to fight with him till the whistle blows, and other teams deliberately try to shoot the gap, but we don't want to do that. We want to strike, try and reset the line, and make our reads in the process of that movement. So when I say make our reads, we're pretty basic with what we're asking guys to do. So you can teach a lot of different reads like down block, traps, pulls, all the different steps that offensive linemen might go through. We just really boil it down to Is he blocking to? Is he blocking away? Or is he pass blocking, by moving backwards? And really that just gives a nice, simple, easily repeated kind of practice methodology. So if we get movement towards that punch, we're going to feel that that's trying to collapse on us. So we want to try and move into the gap. And then we can work a rip move or whatever to get off the block as we find the ball. If it's movement away, then we want to try and follow that through. So as we get that punch and our arms extending away from us, we're going to follow that movement through. So whether it's a pull or a down block, we're essentially moving away from whoever's going to try to block us. So if it's a pull, we're going to follow it, and that becomes fairly obvious, movement away, and you've got the guy actually running away from you. If it's a down block, then we know that suddenly any pressure is going to come from the other side. So we just need to get through our gap vertically, getting a good stable base to try and just get that off of us. We're not going to fight it, but we know that a hand or something's going to come from that way. We can rip it and find the ball. But really, it's all of that is precursor to finding the ball. So reset the line of scrimmage, get off the block, go find the ball, whether it's in a quarterback's hands because he's trying to throw it, or in a running back's hands.
Perfect. And when you say follow a puller, do you sort of get depth? Do you get in his hip pocket? What do you...
Hip pocket. Yeah, I think if we work for too much depth, the chances are that actually we're gonna overrun the play. So that blocker is pretty much always going to be the point of attack. So you follow it, and the running back's going to be looking to get close to it at some point or another. Yeah, too much depth, and actually as we're arcing forwards, the running back's moving away from us. So yeah, very much hip pocket, follow it to the ball.
Brilliant. And just a step back on stances. Do you so you've got a shade? Have you got your man hand down? Or like...
So I'd let the guys be with their hands do what they want to do. So we've got a lot of guys who prefer a 4-point stance, which I'm fine with. If we get somebody who's got absolutely no preference whatsoever, I'll say have your near hand up because it's just quicker to punch. But ultimately, if they want to go 4-point stance, that's fine. I usually try, and this goes for most things actually, if somebody's got a way of doing something that works really well, I don't like to change it. But if somebody asks me, what would you like me to do? Because I have no frame of reference, I would say 3-point stance with your man side or your near side arm up, ready to punch. But the important thing is the first step needs to be with the near side foot, so we can get that punch working with that near foot as well. Whether that comes from an even stance or that foot slightly further back, that's fine, as long as it's not your near side foot that's up, because that's never really going to work.
Because you're not stepping into the man, you're stepping away from the man.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, brilliant. And so you've got a 3-read progression, and then screen passes. Do you sort of do anything special for that?
Yes and no. So the one adjustment is like, if you're not being blocked, you're either being read or you're about to be hit by somebody you can't see. So anytime somebody's not blocked, we just teach them to get their eyes up and find what's coming. So some of that will be scouts. So if we know it's a team that likes to run more screens, then that might be the first look. If it's a team that runs a lot of pulls, so when we're playing like the Warriors, they like to pull guys. So anytime you're not blocked, that's got to be the first look, and we try to crunch down on the puller. But yeah, it's a find out what's going on if you're not blocked. So for screens, if they're not blocked or they're through more easily than they think, then we look at the quarterback. And one good key that works most of the time, if the quarterback's hands are high, we're thinking screen. If his hands are low, then we can think counter or some kind of run play with a pull. So finding the quarterback's not the worst thing in the world. if it's a quick hitting pull, then maybe we want to find the guys about to hit us first. But yeah, anytime you're not blocked, you got to get your eyes open.
Sure. And so when you've got a puller, how do you teach that? So if they're going to kick you out, what do you teach the defensive line on that?
Yeah, so actually we look at it differently for interior and exterior. So interior linemen, we try to wrong shoulder and go underneath it. But exterior, we like to try and squeeze everything back down. Essentially, we're a contained team, so any 5 techs who are left, either tackles blocked down, waiting for the puller, we try to squeeze down as much as we can, attack that pull. If we try to get upfield or even just don't move, then that's just going to widen the gap. So we try to attack the pull, force the running back to then go into where there's less space or have to bow around. And that's really what we're looking for is almost success on that. Like, don't let the running back have that route downhill. Like, the best team at running counter in the country is the Warriors. And if you let those guys have a straight line downhill, then they become very, very hard to tackle. I mean, they're hard to tackle anyway, but they become very hard to tackle when they're running downhill. So if we can force them into traffic to slow down, or if we can force them to go sideways, then that's kind of a win for that guy taking on that block.
Sure. So either you spill them upfield, or you make sure that they've got a slow cut rather than that sort of
Yeah,
800-meter bend. So.
yeah, exactly. Ideally, we keep everything inside of us, but if the worst case is they have to stop, kind of loop back around it, then we can rally to that. There's enough time for our flowing linebackers to kind of pick that up, or safeties to come down.
That takes me nicely onto the linebackers. So you've got a 3 tech and a 1 tech as your sort of base, and 2 5s. How do your linebackers fit that as far as the run's concerned?
Yeah, so obviously a lot depends on how many backs are in the backfield. So if it's single back and we've got 10 personnel, so no tight ends, then one of our linebackers is going to be outside the box anyway. So either we'll flex a guy to a trip side, or on spread we'll flex a weak side linebacker. So we have if it's 10 personnel, we have our 2 linebackers playing the empty gaps, and we really tell them to align to execute. So the thing we stress from day one, and goes back to one of the other points, the more you repeat it, the more people are going to be able to repeat it back to you. So who knows whether the guys actually think like this, but the gap is the space between 2 blockers, not a point on the field. So when we say, right, you've got the A gap, understand that if they're going to run stretch, the A gap's going to be over there pretty quickly. So your responsibility is to stop anything coming between the centre and the guard. So if we're, say, on a hash against a team that we know likes to run stretch to the field, don't line up directly over your gap, because actually you're going to be pretty soon in a position where you can't play it at all. So we give the guys a little bit more freedom to line up, say, maybe on a 30 to play the A gap, so that they can move with the flow. But also, if we get run straight through that gap, the angle they're taking to cut it off, they're either going to make the tackle or going to make the back run towards the other linebacker. So that's the other thing for where we have 2 linebackers in the box, is that it's either got to, if it gets through the line, it's got to be you or the other guy making the tackle. So be in a position where if you don't make it, he's going to. So all of the alignment has to be so that they're working like that. So when you run, kind of take that into drill type situations, like anytime you run open field tackle drills with, I think people call it like rabbit drills or whatever, you've got a ball carrier and 2 tacklers, you always want to be working in that pair so that you have an angle to funnel him into one of the 2 people. And actually linebackers should work with that same mentality, even by their alignments. So if you're not going to make the tackle, make sure that it goes inside of you if that's where your help is, or outside of you if that's where your help is. So so that's how they kind of fit, where it's just guys and gaps. If there's two backs in the backfield, we give somebody the job as being the fullback player. So the fullback's going to create an extra gap, is how we try and talk about it. So strong side linebacker, or usually what we'll call a strong side linebacker with the fullback, his job is to make sure that he fills the outside gap that the fullback creates if it's inside the tackles. So if they want to run like a B gap lead, then the extra linebacker takes on the block on the outside shoulder, and the next linebacker across then fills in the extra gap. So wherever the extra gap is created by the fullback, that's where the fullback player is going to fill. So so he has to align in relation to the fullback to make sure that he can do that. So usually we're looking at like a 40i to 50 at a minimum for his alignment, so that he can then move with the fullback to fit that extra gap.
Oh, I love that. That's a nice, simple way of doing it. And because you've got to beat the Warriors every year, you see that quite a lot.
We have to try and play a fullback, yeah.
And presumably the opposite side of the Sam is exactly the same. So the Will, or whatever you call it, he becomes that extra man.
Exactly, yeah.
So I just want to catch a couple sort of verbiage things for you. So alignment for the linebackers, you said a 30. Can you help viewers with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the same alignment techniques that we said for the D line. So 0, 1, 2i2, 3, 4i4, 5. We add a 0 onto it for the linebacker alignment. So it's exactly the same relationship, but just off the line. And typically we put our linebackers with their heels at 5 yards. It just puts them typically a step closer to the line that a running back's going to be. So we should be able to get to the line at the same time as the running back. I mean, if it's Ray Lewis out there, he can line up wherever he wants to, and that's fine. But we tell our guys heels at 5. If it's third and forever, of course they're gonna adjust. But typically that's the depth. And yeah, we put the 0 on there for just to indicate there's a linebacker alignment rather than a D-line alignment.
Perfect. I've completely forgotten the other verbiage one, but I will ask and put as a comment later.
Yeah, there's probably loads of stuff that's just the way that I say it and nobody else does in there. So
No, it was quite clear. I just I thought, oh, I better clear that out, but I've forgotten now. So, and then sort of flow with the linebackers on sort of outside stretches. What do you teach them?
yeah, so we're still looking to play in those pairs. So anytime we've got the stretch side linebackers, always going to be looking for outside shoulder, knowing that we're going to have somebody else filling in from the backside, even if we've got like alley support, so a safety coming down, who's always going to be a contained player anyway. Even if we've got that, we still like the linebacker to be aiming for that outside shoulder, knowing that we're going to get the help from inside, because typically we're going to be we kind of roll a safety down. So I'd always think our free safety is going to be a straight for the ball carrier kind of guy and clean up. And there's so much flow from the inside anyway. So I would hope that our 5 tech's going to be able to clean up any cutbacks, as well as guys kind of hustling to the ball. So I'll always want our linebacker there to just be aiming for outside shoulder. And because ultimately, if it's a guy that's too quick, aiming for outside shoulder means we're just about going to be there. If it's a guy that's not quick, then everyone else is going to catch up to him anyway, I would hope. So yeah, still working in those pairs like that.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was going to say something else as well, but that I've completely forgotten it. So yeah, aiming for that outside shoulder.
Great. And I've remembered my thing. So you said 10 personnel on the offense and 21. Could you just explain what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first number indicates the number of backs. So one or two backs. And the second number is number of tight ends. So 10 personnel is one running back, no tight ends, which would mean 4 wide receivers. 21 personnel would be 2 running backs, 1 tight end, and which would therefore mean 2 wide receivers.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Great. And so just going back to the defensive line, do you have any sort of stunts or games that you play?
Yeah, so we've done a few, and I think it's one of the reasons for that I kind of still call us a 3-4 team is that we try to use a little bit. So one of the very basic stunts that we run is basically the America Blitz or America's Blitz or NCAA, various different names, but the very basic 3-tech into the A gap and then linebacker stunting over the top into the B gap. So is absolutely my favorite stunt. And the reason that I like it particularly is that if we're going to rush 4, i.e. we're going to drop the 5-tech linebacker off of the line if it's a pass, we're going to rush 4. So we can turn a 4-on-5, i.e. 4 rushers against 5 offensive linemen, into a 2-on-1 in our favor. So but that requires all 4 people doing their jobs. So if you can, I drew it up just in case you ask this question. That's the stunt, right?
Perfect.
But it requires everybody doing their job. So the key thing, and I try to say this when we install this, the person that's key to making that stunt work is the 1-tech. Because if the center doesn't have to deal with the 1-tech, then it's 3-on-3 on that side of the stunt. Actually, yeah, 3-on-3 on that side. But if the center can make sure, sorry, the 1-tech makes sure the center is occupied, then it's 3-on-2. And the tackle has to deal with the 5-tech. So then we get our 2-on-1 against the guard. So even though the 1-tech isn't really the glory person in this stunt, they're the key to making it work. So we definitely do stuff like that, and that's quite. I know Jason talked about fire zone a bit. That's kind of quite a fire zone type of stunt as well.
Yeah.
And
just
sorry.
No, it's right. So just because I like that as well. What do you talk to the 3-tech about? Like, it's fun when he's crossing the face of the guard.
Yeah, so usually we try to get them to tighten their alignment a little bit, but the big thing for me is staying square, because if for some reason the stunting linebacker doesn't get through, if he trips over his shoelaces, whatever, that guy still has to be in a position to play football. So we try to get them to stay square as much as possible. I know some people will teach like you can teach the get skinny, like dip and rip, and dip and rip's good, and we do kind of teach that, but the first steps always need to be quite square. So narrow the stance down a bit, because if your stance is wide, it's very hard to make it any wider. So narrow the stance a bit so your lateral step can get you more ground, so that your first step is going to keep you nice and square. And then from that point, we can make a call on what we want to do next. We can either just try and drive through the guard, or we can try and rip through. And that's really, different guys will have different preferences on what they do there. We have some guys who are a bit more, I'm going to play my gap and nothing's coming through here. We have other guys who want to make something happen, disrupt the backfield. And if they play their gap, I'm kind of fine with either way. But yeah, that first step being square is the big thing for me, because too many guys try and open themselves up, and that's when you get washed down very, very easily. So yeah, staying square on that first step.
Yeah, I definitely find that because I like to talk about being fast because then a guard reacts to you being fast, but you can't be washed down. Otherwise, it's just too big a gap for the linebacker to fill.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, being fast is good when you're up against somebody who's slower than you. And then you want to be fast in everything. But if you put yourself at risk of being washed down, a good guard is going to do exactly that. So yeah, I think we try and teach the quick feet and getting into that position more quickly. We actually incidentally we do quick feet at the start of every session. So I get the guys like, set out cones, you've got 5 yards and 5 yards, and it's a challenge. How many steps can you make in that first 5 yards and then jog it through? So like guys who are a bit newer, they come in and they just try and get there as fast as they can. And it's like, no, these guys are chopping just for that first step to get it nice and quick and nice and short. But yeah, I think we try and the staying square is really the thing that we try.
Yeah, and powerful, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time, Duncan. Would you like to sort of promote your team a little bit? Give it a plug?
Always. Yeah, so we're London Blitz. We're based in North London, Finsbury Park. As and when we get back to the season, very keen to hear from anybody who wants to play, coach, support, assist in any way possible. We're always looking for new friendly faces to join the club.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Sure, no problem at all.